Rupert Brooke, born in 1887 and lived up to 1915, Rupert Brooke has been described as a golden haired Apollo who seemed to have everything that is worth having. He was a handsome young man with a good education and extraordinary intellectual gifts who easily assumed the leadership of the Georgian group of poets. He traveled widely, but he loved England best, loved its flowers and ways to roam. And when war broke out in 1914, he enlisted. The country, groping for a sign and symbol, fastened its eyes upon this young poet who died on war service. He was instantly canonized in the minds of his countrymen. Rupert Brooke is one of those writers whose personality is irretrievably bound up with his works. Shorn of all the external advantages which he enjoyed, he is found to be a poet of great promise. But it would be rash to term him a great poet. He was just beginning to set aside his beautiful bravado. A note of high seriousness was creeping into his poetry when his life was cut short at the age of 27, and so we cannot find a systematic chain of thought running through his poems. He remains essentially a poet of moods, sometimes deliberately vulgar, sometimes light-heartedly gay, and sometimes unconsciously sad. In his early life, Brooke was attracted by the 1890s group of poets, but he soon tired of their vitalite or rather vitiated hothouse atmosphere, and he showed his dislike of petty poetry. He began to wallow in ugliness. He describes a journey by express in Italy, in which he says, opposite me, two Germans sweat and snore, one of them wakes and spits and sleeps again. He uses such violent metaphors as a fly fast stuck in grey sweat on a corpse's neck. In Menelaus and Helen, he takes a sane view of romantic heroes and heroines and reminds us that the most beautiful heroine and the most dashing hero become old and withered. Brooks soon got over his phase and wrote of beautiful and everyday objects. Rupert Brooke is a typical modern poet in his attitude to the age in which he lived. In every age, a reshufflement of value in accordance with the spirit of the age becomes necessary, and it is a poet's task to bring out this readjustment. Rupert Brooke wholeheartedly believed in the modern man's attitude of coming to close grips with life. It is the aim of all arts to create beauty, but in that attempt, the modern writers do not brush aside ugliness and brutality, for that is also a part of life. Rupert Brooke saw the world with a clear eye and recorded what he saw with directness and clarity. He did not believe in beating vain hands in the rosy mist of poets' experiences. As he said in a letter, he spoke of beauty, love, decay, and death with frankness and without illusions. Beauty and love do not last. It is no use sentimentalizing over them. They must decay sooner or later and end, as everything ends in death. Helen, the traditional queen of beauty, becomes a scold haggard with virtue, and love wears away gradually so that suddenly there is no meaning in our kiss. But this is very sane and practical view of life did not take away his zest of living. He once declared, there are only three things in the world. One is to read poetry, another is to write poetry, and the best of all is to live poetry. He did all the three things it is prescribed and brought into his writings a superabundance of life which only can be found in the age of Sir Philip Sidney. His love for commonplace things is genuine. In The Great Lover, he wrote of the 101 everyday objects that gave him joy: plates and cups, dust, wet roofs, wood smoke, the cool cleanliness of sheets, and the rough male kiss of blankets. He invests this domestic catalogue with a significance and beauty and turns the commonplace into the strangely new. He even invests such a common occurrence at the dining room tea with a delicate charm. Rupert Brooke's love of nature is rather mystical, or I would say is neither mystical nor metaphysical. He saw, touched, and enjoyed. He often speaks of the incredibly superb world and his wistfulness, or rather his wistful reminiscence of the old vicarage. Grantchester, written in a Berlin cafe, are as sweet and fresh as the Mayfields he describes. He lets his fancy roam. Just now the lilac is in bloom, all before my little room, and in my flowery beds I think smile the carnation and the pink. There is a curiously fanciful humor playing over the whole of this poem. It brings out also his love of quiet and repose. I only know what you may lie, or rather say, I only know that you may lie day long and watch the Cambridge sky and flower lulled in sleepy grass. Hear the cool laps of hours pass until the centuries blend and blur in Grantchester, in Grantchester. Really does he infuse his own feelings into nature, as for instance, in song where he says, all suddenly the wind comes soft, and spring is here again, and the hawthorn quickens with birds of green, all my heart with birds of pain. When the war came in 1914, Rupert Brooke realized how much his country meant to him. His five war sonnets typify the young soldier's enthusiasm and noble resolve to serve the country. They have in them not a trace of the horrors of war. In versification and meter, his Dead and Peace excel his best known sonnet, The Soldier. In these sonnets, we catch a glimpse of his thoughts gradually becoming matched with his sense of melody. But as he died soon after, the soldier remains for all times his epitaph. Thank you very much.